Hi, boys and girls. Time for a little more reading in Mouse and the Motorcycle. Last time, Ralph lost Keith's motorcycle. I cannot imagine how angry Keith's going to be when he finds out that Ralph lost the motorcycle. Maybe we'll find out today. Maybe they'll get back together before the end of the day. So let's see what happens. Chapter 8, A Family Reunion. The next thing Ralph knew, his mother was shaking him by the shoulder. "Wake up," she said. "Ralph, wake up. Room service brought us another meal." Room service? Ralph rubbed his eyes, not believing what he had heard. Room service brought our dinner? Yeah, a real feast, a whole blueberry muffin and a chocolate chip cookie, said Ralph's mother. "Get up. We're having a family reunion." It all came back to Ralph. "Oh, room service," he said, understanding at last. "You mean the boy, Keith." "He's room service to me." Ralph's mother sounded happy and carefree. Ralph sat up. Already, his aunts and uncles and many squeaky cousins were arriving by the secret pass in the space between the walls. It was a long time since anyone had enough food for a family reunion, and there was rejoicing in the mouse nest for everybody but Ralph. He was thinking of the motorcycle he'd lost and the promise he'd broken. He had a dull, heavy feeling in the pit of his stomach, and he did not feel like celebrating. "Why, there's Ralph!" squeaked his Aunt Sissy, who thought she was better than the rest of the family because she lived in the bridal suite, where she led her relatives to believe riches of rice fell to the carpet when the bride took off her hat and the groom shook out his coat. The rest of the family knew Aunt Sissy was not as grand as she pretended to be, because very few bride and grooms came to this hotel anymore. "My, how you've grown." Ralph never knew what to say when people told him how he'd grown. "Well, well, if it isn't Ralph," said Uncle Lester, who had a nest inside the wall of the housekeeper's office, where the maids dropped donut crumbs every morning at 10 o'clock when they had their coffee. "What's this I hear about you riding up and down the halls on a motorcycle?" Uncle Lester had a way of saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. "My land, a motorcycle?" said old Aunt Dorothy. "Isn't that pretty dangerous?" "Wouldn't mind riding one myself if I were a few years younger," said Uncle Lester. All the little cousins came crowding around Ralph. "Show us your motorcycle," they squeaked. "We want to ride it. Come on, give us a ride on your motorcycle, huh, Ralph? Ralph, come on, Ralph, please." Ralph knew he was expected to be polite to all his relatives, even the squeaky little cousins. Well, embarrassed and shamed, he looked down at the floor. "I sort of lost the motorcycle in a pile of sheets and pillowcases." "Lost the motorcycle? Oh, Ralph!" cried his mother, genuinely alarmed. Ralph knew what she was thinking. Did this mean the end of room service? Did she have to go back to pilfering crumbs for his brothers and sisters? "That's a young mouse for you," said tactless Uncle Lester. "Can't take care of anything." "If anybody asks me, I think it's a good thing he lost it," said Aunt Dorothy. "Riding a motorcycle is just plain foolhardy." All the little cousins looked disappointed and sulky. "I don't think he ever had a motorcycle," said one. "I bet he just made it up," said another, and the rest agreed. Ralph felt terrible. The family reunion swirled on around him. The muffin and the cookie were divided. Cousins fought over the blueberries. Uncles, usually overweight uncles, asked for second helpings. Everyone talked at once. The little cousins finished their dinner and went racing around the mouse nest. The aunts and uncles raised their voices to be heard above the racket their children made. Suddenly, there came from the knothole a noise that drowned out the squeaks and squeals of young mice at play. "Shh!" Not a mouse moved. They looked at one another, too terrified to speak. "Hey, Ralph, come on out," whispered Keith at the entrance to the mouth hole. Ralph's mother gave him a little shove, but no one spoke. With heavy feet, Ralph walked to the knothole, but he didn't go outside into room 215. "What do you want?" he asked. "You and your family better be quiet in there or my mother will hear you. You know how she is about mice," Keith said. "I don't know why people say things are as quiet as mice. You sound like a pretty noisy bunch to me." Behind Ralph, his relatives began to tiptoe quietly away to their own houses, leaving his mother to do all the cleaning up. "Did you have a nice picnic?" Ralph asked, dreading what he must tell the boy. "Yes, we saw an old mining town with a real jail with bars on the windows." Keith reached into his pocket and pulled out something curved and hard and white with a rubber band fastened to it and a piece of Scotch tape. "I brought you a present," he said. "Come on out." Puzzled and curious, Ralph squeezed through the knothole. "What is it?" he asked. Whatever the object was, he'd never seen anything like it. "Half a ping pong ball I found down in the game room," said Keith. "See? I padded the inside with the thistle down and anchored the rubber band to the top with Scotch tape." "What for?" Ralph still didn't understand. "It's a crash helmet for you." Keith set half a ping pong ball on Ralph's head and slipped the rubber band carefully around his whiskers until it rested under his chin. "There, that's just right. You need it big so there will be plenty of room for your ears. When you ride a motorcycle, you need a crash helmet." Ralph peered at Keith from under his new crash helmet, which rested lightly on his head. He knew he looked every inch a motorcycle racer, but never in his whole life had he felt so ashamed. He longed to crawl off into his hole and never face Keith again. But his conscience, which until now he did not know he had, would not let him. There was nothing to do but stand there in his fine new crash helmet and confess. "You might as well know," he told Keith. "I lost the motorcycle." "Lost the motorcycle," Keith said, who'd been kneeling, sat back on his heels. "But how?" "I rode it by mistake into a pillowcase in a heap of linen on the floor, and it got dumped into the laundry hamper," confessed Ralph. "You rode it into the pillowcase," repeated Keith, "but you weren't supposed to ride it in the daytime. You promised." I know," agreed Ralph miserably. "I didn't exactly mean to ride it." "But you did." Keith's voice was accusing. "Well, you see, the maid was vacuuming under the bed, and I," began Ralph and stopped. "Well, what's the use? I wrote it. I lost it. It's probably gone to the laundry by now, and I'm sorry." The boy and the mouse were silent. Both were thinking about the little motorcycle with its clean lines and pair of shiny chromium exhaust pipes. "That motorcycle was my very most favorite of all my cars," said Keith. "I saved my allowance and bought it myself." Ralph hung his head in his crash helmet. There was nothing more he could say. It was a terrible thing he'd done. "I guess I should have known you weren't old enough to be trusted with a motorcycle," said Keith. The boy could not have said anything that would have hurt Ralph more. Chapter 9. Ralph takes command. It was a sad night for Ralph. A sad and lonely night. If he went back to the mouse hole, his mother was sure to worry him with embarrassing questions about the motorcycle. She would also expect him to help clean up after the family reunion. If he took off his crash helmet, he could squeeze under the door and explore the hall on foot, but he could not bear to part with the helmet. And anyway, he had no desire to travel by foot where he had once ridden with such noise and speed. Ralph scurried through shadows on the floor to the curtain, which he climbed to the windowsill. There he sat, huddled and alone, staring out into the night, listening to the kissing sounds of the bats as they jerked and zigzagged from the eaves of the hotel, through the pines and back again. Around the window, the leaves of a Virginia creeper vine shifted in the breeze. Down in the lobby, a clock struck midnight. An owl slid silently through the night across the clearing of the parking lot from one pine to another. Ralph could remember a time when he had envied bats and owls in their ability to fly. But that was before he had experienced the speed and power of a motorcycle. Early in the morning, the smell of bacon drifted up from the kitchen, brought back all Ralph's dreams of the ground floor. It was not long until he was embarrassed to discover that Keith was awake and was lying quietly in his bed watching him. "Hi," said Keith. "Oh, hello." Ralph wished he had returned to the mouse hole before dawn. "Well, I guess it's about time for me to go home to bed." Keith sat up. "Don't go yet. Wait till my folks get up." Ralph leaped to the floor. "I didn't think you'd want to talk to me after I lost your motorcycle." "I may never have another chance to talk to a mouse." Ralph was flattered. It had never occurred to him that a boy would consider talking to a mouse anything special. "What would you like for breakfast?" asked Keith. "You mean we still get room service after what I did?" "Sure." Keith pulled his knees up under his chin, wrapped his arms around his legs. "You mean you aren't mad at me anymore?" asked Ralph. "I guess you might say I'm mad, but not real mad," Keith decided. "I've been lying here thinking. It wouldn't be right for me to be real mad because I get into messes myself. My mom and dad tell me I don't stop to use my head." Ralph nodded. "I guess that's my trouble too. I don't stop to use my head." "They say I'm in too much of a hurry," said Keith. "They say I don't want to take time to learn to do things properly." Ralph nodded again. He understood. If he'd waited till he'd learned to ride the motorcycle, he would have never ridden off the bedside table into the wastebasket. "I'll never forget the first time I rode a bicycle with handbrakes," reminisced Keith. "I took right off down a hill. I'd always ridden bicycles with foot brakes, and when I got going too fast, I tried to put on foot brakes, only there weren't any." "What happened?" Ralph was fascinated. "By the time I remembered to use the handbrakes, I hit a tree and I took an awful spill." Somehow, this story made Ralph feel better. He was not the only one who got in trouble. "The hard part is," continued Keith, "I am in a hurry. I don't want to do kid things. I want to do big things. Real things. I want to grow up." "You look pretty grown up to me," said Ralph. "Well, maybe to a mouse," conceded Keith. "But I want to look grown up to grown-ups." "Well, so do I," said Ralph with feeling. "I want to grow up and go down to the ground floor." "Everybody tells me to be patient," said Keith, "but I don't want to be patient." "Me either," agreed Ralph. Someone stirred next door in room 216. "Well, I guess I better be running along," said Ralph. "Say, about that breakfast." "Well, sure. What do you want?" "How about some bacon?" suggested Ralph, remembering the fragrance that had floated up to the windowsill. "And some toast?" "With jelly," agreed Ralph, and ran off to the mouse hole, eager to tell his family things were not so bad after all. They were still entitled to room service. But when Ralph reached the mouse hole, he found pandemonium. His brothers and sisters and cousins were huddled together, squeaking with fright. His mother picked up a bunch of shredded Kleenex and put it down again, only to pick it up, another bunch, as if she did not know what to do with it. Uncle Lester and Aunt Dorothy were there too, stuffing crumbs in their mouths as if they expected to never eat again. Dear me, Ralph's mother was saying. Whatever Oh, Ralph, there you are at last. Where on earth have you been? Never mind, we haven't time. Time for what? Asked Ralph. What's going on around here? The housekeeper, your Uncle Lester, the sheets. Oh, do be quiet, everybody. Ralph's mother was so agitated she could not tell her son what was wrong. Uncle Lester swallowed a mouthful of crumbs. It's like this, Ralph. The housekeeper discovered a hamper full of sheets and towels and pillowcases with holes chewed on them. Uh-oh, thought Ralph. Whatever had happened was all his fault. He might have known. I heard her telephoning the manager about it from her office, continued Uncle Ralph Lester. The manager came up and called in all the maids and the bellboys, and everyone had to look at the holes chewed in the sheets. It was quite a powwow. The motorcycle, thought Ralph. What happened to the motorcycle? There might be a chance it didn't go to the laundry after all. You didn't happen to see a motorcycle in the housekeeper's office, did you? He ventured. I was listening, not looking out, said Uncle Lester. I am not foolhardy, like some people around here. Ralph, you know what this means. His mother managed to pull herself together to say that much. It means war on mice, said Aunt Dorothy ominously. It means traps, poison, said Uncle Lester. Who knows? This time the management might even spend money on an exterminator. We shall have to flee. There's nothing else to do. And if we flee, the owls will get us, said Ralph's mother, causing the brothers and sisters and cousins to set up an awful squeal. Shh! The mother mouse fluttered her paws in alarm. Flee, Ralph was bewildered. Flee? And leave room service? Room service, exclaimed his mother. How can we expect room service after you lost that poor boy's motorcycle? It's all right, Ralph assured his mother, and could not resist adding rather grandly. I've already ordered. Room service is bringing us bacon and toast with jelly. The news silenced everybody. A breakfast of bacon and toast with jelly delivered to the mouse nest without first being dropped on the carpet was not to be abandoned lightly. We want some jelly, we want some jelly, all the little cousins began to squeak. Be quiet, ordered Uncle Lester. Do you want them to find us? Ralph knew that no matter what the other chose to do, he was not going to flee from the hotel, not until he found out what had happened to the motorcycle. He was very sure of this, and all at once he felt calm and clear-headed that he had never felt before. He knew exactly what his family should do. Be quiet, everybody, Ralph ordered, standing up straight so all his relatives could see him. I will tell you what we're going to do. See here, Ralph, interrupted Uncle Lester. You're pretty young to be giving orders to your elders. Now, Lester, said Aunt Dorothy, let's listen to Ralph. After all, he has our food brought up by room service. No one else in the history of the family has managed that. This silenced Uncle Lester, and Ralph was allowed to continue. What we should do is keep quiet for a few days. Here he looked down at his little cousins, who for once in their lives were not squeaking. I will arrange for room service to bring our meals so we won't have to go scrabbling along the woodwork or scrounging around in the rooms. That way, we won't be tempted to taste any poisoned food or go near any traps. And if the management doesn't see or hear any of us for a few days, they'll forget about us. They always do. Now, just a minute, said Uncle Lester. This boy won't be here long. You know how it is with people. Here today, gone tomorrow. Ralph had an answer. This is only Sunday. He will be here until Tuesday because Monday is the 4th of July and his father said he won't drive in holiday weekend traffic. He always brings us plenty, and if we don't stuff ourselves, we can save enough to last until the management forgets about us. Uncle Lester nodded thoughtfully. Well, that seems like a sound idea. Yes, but Ralph, There's one thing that worries me, said his mother. How are we going to tip room service? When people have a waiter bring food to the room, they always give him a coin or two for his service. We haven't any money. Ralph hadn't thought about this. If we're going to continue to accept room service, we must do the right thing, insisted his mother. Well, don't worry, I'll think of something, promised Ralph, in the grand way he had acquired since he had ordered a meal sent up to the mouse nest. So do you think Ralph's plan's going to work? So Ralph's plan is that they're going to stay in the mouse hole. They're going to be really quiet. Keith is going to bring them food for a few days so they don't have to go out. And they hope by then that management will have forgotten all about the mice and they'll pick up the mouse traps and the poison. So it's going to be interesting to see if Ralph's plan works out. So until the next time, have a great day, and I'll see you later.